we are starting in...
Sorry, can I ask?
Wow, okay, yeah, sure.
I wanted to ask for each topic, you're going to ask the question beforehand, right?
Yeah, I'll ask the question before. It's like an interactive session. I'll ask you the question and then you answer, you respond, then it will be another person.
All right, no, it's perfect.
Okay, so you can all put your mics on mute.
Okay.
Thank you everyone for joining us for our special webinar to commemorate menstrual hygiene. My name is Musonda Chikwanda and I'm the Girl Up Regional Manager for Africa. So I know if this is the first time you're joining us for our webinar, you're asking what is Girl Up? This is the first time I'm hearing it. So Girl Up is an initiative by the United Nations Foundation where we train and empower young girls globally in order to achieve gender equality. And today being Menstrual Hygiene Day, we felt it was very important to discuss and share an important aspect of being a girl or a woman, particularly how we can stop the stigma around menstruation. So in the next hour, we're going to be bringing awareness around the vital role that menstrual hygiene management plays and basically empower young girls and adolescent girls worldwide to become what they never thought they would be, or just to motivate them to reach their highest potential. So to discuss this issue, I have a wonderful panel of young ladies who are advocates of adolescent girls and also menstrual hygiene and sexual reproductive health. So we have Ms. Stepha Abdul, who's the founder, actually not co-founder, of Peace, Equality, Empowerment and Growth Initiative in Nigeria, where she's also empowering young girls and aspiring youths in her organization. Stepha, just introduce yourself.
Hi, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you so much, Ms. Nanda, for granting me this opportunity. This is my first Zoom session, and I'm quite nervous, but anyways, my name is Abdul. Like Musanda said, I'm from Nigeria. I am the founder of the PEG initiative, which stands for Peace, Equality, Empowerment, and Growth. The function of the PEG initiative is to create sustainable schemes that help to empower all genders, not just the women and girls, but also gender inclusion. But most in particular, women and girls are very important, being that today is World Menstrual Hygiene Day. So that's pretty much it from my side. Can you hear me? I think Musanda is frozen.
Yes, we can hear you.
Thank you so much, Stepha. So yes, we can. So our second panelist is Nyasha Muzazi from Zimbabwe, who we have been closely working with as Girl Up, and there in Zimbabwe, she's working as a Girl Up community leader, definitely providing, she's been working and organizing pad drives in Zimbabwe. Nyasha, you can go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hi guys, how's everyone? So basically I'm the community. Can everybody hear me? Okay, can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so I'm the community leader for Girl Up Zimbabwe. What we do is we advocate for girls' rights and the empowerment of adolescent girls, and that's advocating for more girls to get into STEM, also letting girls pursue leadership roles in society, and also advocating against gender-based violence. So I guess basically everything that's got to do with the well-being of adolescent girls. And also, I'm also the founder of an organization called Grace Foundation, who basically do the same thing, and that's empowering young girls and also young women in Zimbabwe. Yeah, that's it.
Thank you so much for the introduction. Our third panelist is Kaoma. She's the co-founder of an organization that's youth-led called Coparos. Faith, you can go ahead and introduce yourself.
Thanks very much, Ms. Wanda, and it's lovely to meet all of you virtually, my fellow panelists. My name is Faith Kaoma, and I am joining this webinar with you from Lusaka, Zambia, where I'm based. I am the co-founder and chief operations officer at Coparos Zambia, and a youth-led organization that started almost 6 years ago now, that seeks to educate adolescents about sexual reproductive health. And one of our flagship projects was on menstrual hygiene management. So this is a topic that's sincerely dear to my heart. Very happy to be here and looking forward to the discussions that we'll have this evening. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Kaoma. Our fourth panelist is Goitsemodimo. So Goitesa is a assistant program officer at Africa Trust based in Botswana, and also she's a Women Deliver Leaders Scholar recipient for the class of 2018.
Good evening, my fellow panelists. Goitsemodimo, I know it's really a struggle for most people to pronounce. You can cut it short and say Goitse. Yes, I work for SRHR, Africa Trust. It's a regional organization that is based in Botswana, South Africa. It's our regional office. Then we have an office in Zambia. We have an office in Zimbabwe and Malawi. What we do, we are focusing much more on SRHR, sexual reproductive health and rights, and also gender-based violence. So menstrual health is one of the issues that we do tackle at community level. So that I think being in this panel gave me an opportunity to actually share what we experience and what the successes that we had and the work that we do in Botswana.
Thank you so much. So to just dive into this discussion, I'll start with you, Faith. Why do you think Menstrual Hygiene Day is an important day that should be celebrated and commemorated?
Thanks, Ms. Wanda. Yeah, so Menstrual Hygiene Day is today, 28th of May, is a very important day, just like any other. Obviously, it's just like an ordinary day, but the fact that we're commemorating and thinking about menstrual hygiene is very important. Just as we have World AIDS Day and all these other days, we have those days in particular so that we can reflect on, one, the strides we've made in this fight, because as you know, menstrual health is quite a cross-cutting issue in all projects that have to do or have to involve young women and girls. So the most important thing that we need to remember every Menstrual Hygiene Day is that we are looking back and reflecting on the progress we've made in our communities, in our countries, in our regions, on things that promote great menstrual hygiene management practices, learning from our lessons, and also looking at the challenges and seeing where could we have done better. In my opinion, I think it goes without saying, I think there's no other way we could commemorate such an important thing such as menstrual health on this day.
Thank you so much, Faith, for that. I think so. My next question goes to everyone. I know you all mentioned the wonderful work that you're doing, but I also want to hear what approaches you've had towards, sensitization and awareness on menstrual hygiene for young girls and women as a whole. I'll start with you, Stepha.
Thank you for the question, Ms. Sanda. What have PEG started over a year ago? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, so that's great. So yes, my organization started over a year ago, and then before that, I have assisted my mentors, and I also have my mentees. I have younger sisters. So I have assisted these people in providing them with menstrual health resources such as the sanitary pad, the tampons, and also the tissue, and then wipes also. And also, I also act as an advisor for schools. My mentor works with certain secondary schools where there are lots of young girls in the school. So she acts as a guidance counselor, and then she brings me in to talk with these young girls. Sometimes they get scared when they have like their periods in class. They get scared when they get stained, and that takes me back to my very first time. So I help in sensitization through guiding them, counseling them, and I also just check up on them once in a while, and I also provide them with resources that sustain them during the menstrual periods. I think that's it. Hello? Hello?
We can hear you, Steph. I just think
Yes, we can hear you. So I'd also like to hear from Gwen of dealing with menstrual hygiene.
Okay.
So can everybody hear me? Yeah, so I'm passing this question again to you, Goitesa, on the approaches that you're using towards sensitizing girls on menstruation at your organization, and also as an assistant program officer.
In Botswana, as an advocacy organization, what we have done recently, we've realized that even though the government has tried to help the underprivileged young girls to get menstrual products, it has been a struggle for most of them because there is shortage. So what we've been doing was to look at what could the gaps be. And we realized that not only that girls are struggling to get a product, there is also issue of hygiene, the water, there was shortage of water, especially around schools. So we looked at the product, we looked at the pricing, and the pricing was quite high, which made it impossible for young girls to attain. Therefore, we decided that we will do an advocacy campaign in which we're asking the government to remove or get rid of the tax on all menstrual hygiene products, in which it ended up being tabled at the parliament because we were putting pressure on the government to say a young girl is being taxed for reaching their milestone or bodily milestone, because it's part of growing up. Each and every young girl passes through that stage. There is no way we can avoid that, and it's natural. So we cannot punish them by even making it worse by putting a tax, and tax makes it even more expensive. So those were some of the initiatives that we had adopted to try and make sure that a young girl will be able to buy sanitary pads at an affordable price. We also talked to the Ministry of Education, especially considering the issue of water in the schools, because young girls also need water for hygiene's sake. We also wanted to make sure that their ablutions, or maybe let me say their toilets or bathrooms, they have also the shea bins where they can dispose their sanitary pads, because young girls have been struggling, especially when you're in school and there's no water and you were unfortunate maybe to stain on your clothes. So those were some of we've been pushing hardly on advocacy. And only at community level, what we were doing, we had been asking the community to donate the pads, and they have been given to some schools which were able to identify young girls who were in need. Those were some of the projects that we had.
Okay,
yes.
Thank you so much. So I'll go to you, Faith. So period poverty is a common concept that has been used since Menstrual Hygiene Day was declared. And I know in your intro you mentioned you work with adolescent girls. Would you kindly share with us your relationship with this concept and just what period poverty is and how you've been able to work with the young girls that you're working with?
Yeah, sorry, I didn't know my mic was not unmuted. Yeah, so Copperos as an organization, like I mentioned in the intro, started as purely focused on menstrual hygiene management. This is something that led to us starting because they wanted to raise awareness about menstrual health and, you know, break the taboos around access to these services, to products, and also even just talking about menstrual hygiene. And when it comes to the issue of period poverty, I feel that this is something that is often, I mean, it's often seen as, you know, it's effective in terms of like finding solutions to tackling period poverty, but not extensively, because I think this is a subject that can only be effective once it's in conjunction with other aspects. For example, you can't talk about menstrual hygiene without talking about other sexual reproductive health issues. For example, access to contraception, access to information about someone's body. So I think having to integrate menstrual hygiene in different aspects of sexual reproductive health is something that we've done at Copper Rose. And even if we started as a menstrual hygiene championing organization, we have in the last couple of years transitioned into looking at the broader issue, which is sexual reproductive health and access to family planning, because we've seen that even as we go in these communities to talk to women about their body, to talk to women about their sexual reproductive rights, they always come up with issues that affect them holistically. So, I mean, I think there's a lot of progress that has been made, but I still feel there's room for us to tackle period poverty. We still have women in Zambia in particular, and also all over the world. We've seen campaigns in the UK tackling period poverty, trying to ensure that women have the right products that they need, women have healthy and safe products to use, and not using, you know, the traditional things that they've learned, you know, because they don't have access to these services. They end up using things like old rugs or dried leaves because they don't have access to these products. Over.
Thank you so much, Faith, for sharing that insight. So I'll come over to you, Nyasha, and building up on what Faith mentioned on how it's hard for some girls to have access to the, you know, sanitary towels that are right for them to use. I just want you, when you look back at your first experience, when you first had your first menstrual cycle, would you say there has been an improvement in the way society talks about menstrual hygiene, the awareness that's created for a young girl who has their first experience of menstruating, sorry?
Okay, so looking back at when I had my mens for the first time, I think there was a lot of, you know, shying away from talking about the issue of menstrual hygiene. And, you know, our parents used to talk to us about it, but usually it was a topic that we couldn't talk about freely. For starters, I think that was the major problem, and that's menstrual hygiene education. It was lacking back then, and I still feel like even now it's still lacking in schools and also between mothers and their children. And when it comes also to the actual pads and everything, when I started my mens, the economy was not so bad in Zimbabwe, but and pads were very affordable. But now we see that pads are really, really expensive. So I think when it comes to the affordability of menstrual sanitary pads, things have quite changed. But when it comes to everything else, the stigma around menstrual periods, I think the thing is still the same.
Thank you so much for that. I think to just now dive into our topic of discussion, which is ending the stigma. I know we're all coming from different backgrounds, different countries, and also have had different experiences. And of course, you have probably heard of myths and stories that are surrounding menstruation or a girl just becoming of age. I have heard bizarre things like, oh no, whenever you're on your period, you don't need to cook, and all sorts of different stories and myths that are there. So, and of course, I would also want to hear from you, share with the girls and the several programs that you have worked on. How do you think we can work towards ending the stigma that surrounds menstrual hygiene in our communities and in our countries? I'll start with you, Stepha.
Hello, can you please ask the question again? Can you ask the question again, because my network froze.
Okay, so I'm just saying there are so many myths that surround a girl becoming of age. The example that I gave was whenever a young girl is menstruating, they don't need to cook, they don't need to eat certain foods, and just different myths that have been held, and of course you have different stories you've heard. So I just want you to, reflect and just give some detail on how we can end this stigma that surrounds these young girls, of course, based on the myths that. Can you hear me? We can have Faith. I don't know if you heard the question on Yasha, if you are.
I can hear you.
Okay,
Hello?
Did you hear the question? Sorry. Did you hear the question?
You said, how do we end the stigma on the menstrual, on the myth concerning menstrual health? That's the question, right? If I can sum it.
Yes. Yes.
Okay, let me see. First things first, in terms of sensitization, like ending the stigma and the myth, or rather, I think, let me relate it to the question you asked me, that's the roadblocks and things like that. I live in an urban area, and if you want to end, to end the stigma, you should look at mostly the rural areas. Let's say in Nigeria, I live in the northern part of Nigeria, which is the capital, Abuja, which is also located in the northern part. But then if you look deep into the northern areas, like the Kano, the Kaduna, and the other areas, those are the areas that we need to focus on. And most of these women, I think one of the panelists mentioned, was it Nyasha mentioned that most of these people use, some of them also use cloth to tie themselves due to the lack of menstrual resources, menstrual hygiene resources. In the north, 90% of the decision making of the decision making autonomy rests on the male figures in their society, seen as it's mostly a patriarchal society. And also when it comes to the women menstrual health, let's not just look at it based on the menstrual health. Let's look at the women's health in general. Most of these women, despite them having access to some of these resources, they're not able to use the resources seen as it's modern to them and it's a new thing to them. So what we can do, we can go to the community leaders, especially in these rural areas. We talk to them more, we sensitize them more. We also speak with the men also to educate their wives, their sisters, their cousins, their daughters. So it's basically from the top to bottom, like the top to down theory. So you go from the top, which is the leaders, which is the men, then you work your way down to the women, because you might take some of these resources door to door to the ladies. They will take it from you, but they will not use it. Why wouldn't they use it? Because their father says they don't agree with these modern methods, or their brothers say that this isn't our way. Let's do our things traditionally. And the traditional way is usually they tie the cloth on themselves. And I've heard in some cases where sometimes when the lady is on a period and she starts to, like when you're on your period, there's a certain discharge, a thick blood clot discharge that comes out of you. In these remote areas, they usually go dig a hole, and then they have the lady sit on it so that she can pour whatever is coming out of her system into it. That's the traditional method. The cloth also, and I think they use tissue papers because they don't know what the sanitary pad is. If you give them a tampon, they're like, why do I have to stick this into me? So those are things that affect the stigma. Those are things that affect the ladies of getting proper mental hygiene resources. So yeah, the top to bottom approach is very important in ending the stigma. creating sensitization programs, and also going to schools. Like one of my panelists said, she mentioned that she goes to schools, she creates campaigns. I do things like that alongside my mentor. So you go to the schools, the public schools, the private schools, wherever you are. You also go to the leaders, you speak to them, and then you enforce them town hall meetings. So those are ways that you can tackle the stigma towards menstrual hygiene. And also, we need to do our best to let the ladies know that it is totally normal to bleed every month. I mean, bleed through your vagina every month. I don't mean bleed like harm yourself, but like it's totally normal. And because that happens, that doesn't mean that you should be ostracized by the society. I know that sometimes growing up, I would pull myself away from my brothers, because I have 4 brothers and just 2 girls, me and my sister. So and the age gap between my sister and I, it's like 7 whole years. So 7 years. So I had to experience so many things by myself before she started learning anything. So so whenever I have my period growing up, I would pull away from my dad, pull away from my uncles, pull away from my brothers. But my mom always said that it's totally normal. So what happened was that I would just indirectly make myself feel like an outcast when that wasn't necessary. And these women, some of them, it's basically more in the mental psyche of everything. Like, oh, maybe because of dad doesn't like the way the period smells around him, or because of uncle doesn't like the way the period smells, or the smell, and because I feel very comfortable, I'll rather pull myself away from it. So first things first, we create more campaigns to empower the girls in schools, door-to-door approaches, speak with friends, speak with family, and also create a platform for them, like a healthline platform, because I know that they have a mental health platform where if you're going through depression, if you're going through any mental health issue, you can call the lines. So I would advise that we create health lines for women and girls mostly. That way, whenever there's any issue regarding their health, not just their menstrual health, they also call that helpline, and there's always help available. And also, one thing I would say we can do also to end the stigma is not just to talk to the people, but to also make the resources available for every one of them. In some areas, it's very expensive to get the menstrual pad, to get the tissue, to get the tampons, to get the moon cups. It's very expensive. But then, like, what we can do, we can either give it at discounted prices, or we can just give it out for free. But whatever we do, let's just make the girl child know and women know that it is totally normal to have to go through a menstrual cycle, to go through menstruation. And because of that change is happening to your body every month, that doesn't mean that you should pull yourself out of society. So yes, I think that answers it. On my part, though.
Okay, no, thank you so much, Stepha. And I like the fact that you echoed to say it's important to make the girls know that there's nothing, it's not a taboo for you to go on your monthly period. So I'll ask the same question to Goites, knowing with Africa Trust in Botswana, and I know how you guys having a lot of different branches within the African countries. I would also want to hear from you how you are working in your programs in order to end the stigma that exists with the young girls that you're working with on menstrual hygiene or menstruating.
When we talk of the stigma around menstrual hygiene in Botswana, is one of the issues that we experience in here. One of the things that is working with young women and girls that we've noticed is that they consider young girls who are on their periods to be dirty. This is because of the culture. As we grow up, when we had our first periods, we were told that when you are on your period, you can't really play with other kids, you can't play with boys especially, and you will be kept in the house. And such things that were done when a young girl was starting their menstruation, those are things that now makes it hard for anyone or any other girl converse around menstrual health. So some of the needs around menstrual health include the menstrual hygiene products, in which things like tampon, they break virginity. It's one of the things that we hear from young girls. And looking at that, you'll find that yes, we all want our young girls to be virgins and to stay safe away from sex. That was the society wants, but this society makes it, or I would say the virginity is overrated, and you'd find that they hate the hygiene things, products such as tampons, and hating them makes it hard to even use it, even when you are trying, when you donate them to young girls. They will tell you that this thing I was told not to use. And you will be wondering, but we are talking about a young girl who doesn't even have, and they consider menstruation or the blood to be dirty. They feel like if because some of them, you find that maybe somebody has an irregular period because they're just starting, they feel like they are dirty. So others will also discriminate them. If you are on your period, you are going to be discriminated. If you are not on your period, when you are supposed to have your periods, you are still discriminated. So what we do, we go into schools usually to teach young girls about their bodies, to understand their bodies, to understand this process, that what is happening is so normal and they shouldn't be ashamed of it. And not only are we teaching young girls, we also involving boys to understand the process as well, to understand that when somebody is on their period, there is nothing wrong or they are not dirty. They still can come to school, because usually when they are on their periods, they skip school and they are missing out because of something that is natural, that could be easily handled. Because if we were to provide the needs or the necessary things that they need to have a safe period, then it will be easier for them. But what we do is to go into schools and educate young girls and boys to make sure that we break this stigma at their age, and also understand that culture, what they were taught at home, is not really what it is. So that's how we usually try to address these issues.
Thank you so much, Goites, for giving an in-depth of what the programs and also the strategies you're using as Africa Trust. So then I'll pass the next question to Nyasha. I know, Nyasha, in your introduction, you mentioned, you've been working with girls having to do pad drives, so you're able to donate in the underprivileged communities, or what I would call the underserved communities. Would you also share some of the strategies, how you are working towards ensuring that there is no stigma, and these societies that you go to understand the importance of raising awareness on menstrual hygiene?
Okay, so basically what my other panelists said is more or less of what we're doing. But one of the major things that I just want to highlight is because stigma is usually surrounded by culture. The reason why there's so much stigmatization around menstrual hygiene and periods, everything, is because we have also been, I think, brainwashed actually to believe that, when you're on your period, you can't talk to boys. When you're having your period, you can't do certain things and get dirty and all that kind of stuff. So I think the most effective way that we've been, I think, advocating for is engaging our traditional cultures and talking to the chiefs and also the people who make these cultures. So I think that has been the most important advocacy that we have been doing, and that involves talking to our chiefs and letting them know that we are in the 21st century, and some of the stigmas that are around menstrual hygiene, they're not logical and they're also not scientific. They're not scientific. So I think that's something that we must all strive on doing as organizations, and that is just talking to people who make this culture, this stigma, everything. And also the work we're doing with them, because our major problem is because sanitary wear is very expensive. So what we have done is try to teach women and girls in underprivileged communities how to make reusable sanitary wear. And because of that, now comes the stigma of using material. So what we do is we move around and we remove that stigma in schools around using sanitary wear that's been made from cloth. And we also remove the stigma of all the infections that it may cause, and then we teach them the hygienic way of keeping this reusable pads. So basically, I think the most important thing is advocacy, and that is demystifying all the stigmas and what we must do, and what we're doing towards that is talking to the chiefs from these rural areas and so forth.
Thank you so much for sharing that. So I think my next question would be to Faith. I know right now we are all in a situation, in a pandemic. COVID has affected everyone. I just want to know, what do you think will be the impact of girls and women in relation to menstrual hygiene and just sexual reproductive health in general? I'll start with you, Faith.
Thanks, Musonda. Yeah, well, you all agree with me that this pandemic has, pretty much come from the blues. Someone was saying in some of the other webinars I've attended earlier today that it has robbed us of the 2020 we all expected. But, in every sad situation, something good always comes out of it. And I think that even if, it would be very biased for me to just point out menstrual hygiene and COVID-19 to say that because the pandemic has happened, it's going to affect women's menstrual health or menstrual hygiene management. I think that it will affect girls everywhere, in every single way that you can imagine. Talking about access to economic opportunities, having, money, their education, them finding themselves in situations that they would not ordinarily be found because of trying to ensure that they can fend for themselves, getting involved in these bad vices for the purpose of survival. So I think in terms of COVID-19 in particular to menstrual health, if young girls and women don't have access to money, then they'll most likely not be able to purchase the right products that they need when they're on their period. And, all of that, as Nyasha and Stepha have mentioned earlier in their interventions, that it's a ripple effect. The fact that you can't have access to adequate products will affect your ability to go to work, affect your ability to go to school. Maybe you'll go, but how participative will you be? Will you be at your best? Will you be able to contribute to the economy effectively? Because you're self-conscious of what the products that you're using. So I think if I have to specifically say how it's going to affect menstrual health management for girls and young women, it's definitely a very bad thing. It's negatively going to affect this, but I have hope that even amidst this crisis, this global pandemic, there is light at the end of the tunnel. And right now in the development sector, we're talking about building back better. So how are we going to build back a better world? In what ways, in our different initiatives in Botswana, in Zimbabwe, in Nigeria, how are we going to collectively build back better? A better world for the girl child, a better world for young women out there who are menstruating, who are facing excruciating levels of period poverty. So it's something to reflect on and something worth thinking about going forward. Over.
Question to you, Goites, on what do you think the impact is on the girls and women that you're working with because of the COVID pandemic?
I think because of this pandemic, if you look at different countries, so many countries are on lockdown, and lockdown means that you are restricted. Your movement is restricted. You can't access shops, and some of them, the economy, when you look at the economy, you find that most parents, especially who are on the informal sector, cannot make money. That means they cannot afford to provide menstrual or let me say sanitary pads for their children. You look at the other who are employed, they go on unpaid leaves. That means it is difficult to access sanitary pads as well. So looking at this, I can imagine a young girl at home who is on their period and they don't have sanitary pads. To start with, they are going to start isolating themselves from the family, because now it is making them they are uncomfortable because of the situation that they are in. They cannot ask from anyone because of the fear of COVID as well, of Corona as well. So in this era of COVID, we are bound to face more mental issues. Looking at the situation, the fact that young girls cannot access sanitary pads, they are bound to isolate themselves, they are bound to be lonely, they are bound to be in a stressful situation, and the mental problems are going to rise. In looking at the fact that already they're in a confusion. As an adolescent, you don't know what's happening in your body and how people are going to view you or look at you, or what to say to your brother who you are on lockdown with, or your family, or your father, or rather your abusive parents or abusive partners. It's really going to increase issues of mental problems. I see it in that angle.
Thank you so much for that. So we'll move to our Q&A session. If any of the listeners, if you have a question for the panelists, please type it in the chat box and they'll be able to address it. So we have a first question from Cindy, who's asking, can we make sanitary pads free? I mean, menstruation is not a choice, but sex is. So what are your thoughts on Cindy's question? Can we make sanitary pads free? Should we actually, not can we, should we make sanitary pads free?
So we're free to answer the question.
I think we can start with Stepha.
Okay.
All right, so Cindy, in regards to your question, yes, sex is not free. Sorry, yes, yes. I mean, condoms are free, but like menstrual pads, it's not free. To my knowledge, I know that most family planning organizations, most organizations that are focused on women and child empowerment, they actually make the pads and the sanitary pad, the tampons, the tissue, they actually make it free for women, to my knowledge, based on research and statistics. But if you're looking at generalizing the prices of the menstrual items and of the sanitary pads, that's something that the government has to take into hands. But based on private individuals, they actually make it free. Like for me, I know that I plan to set up a walk-in kiosk for sanitary pads for ladies, right outside my office or in my office, or just at any given location to make it available for them. So in regards to that, I can't really say much on it, but I would really love if the pads are actually free than the condoms being free, because sex is something you can control. That is something everyone can control. We have a choice to make in that area. But when it comes to something that has to do with your health, the menstrual health and everything, that's not something you can control. That no matter the pills you take, anything you take to stop it, it will still come. So yes, I wish, trust me, if I would save a lot of money if sanitary pads and tampons are free, but we have to, it is what it is. So that's something that I know that in the coming years, maybe in 5 years to come, 10 years to come, all of us here being a part of Girl Up, and the other women and girl child and empowerment organization, this is something that we're working towards achieving. So in our little ways, we've actually started making these menstrual resources free and available for women. And it's not something that we can do by ourselves. It's something that the government have to put a stamp on it and say that it's free. In some countries, areas in the country, both the rural and urban areas, the sanitary pads are free. Like I said, organizations like Girl Up, I know that they also give these items free because it's part of empowerment. My organization, I also give these items free because it's part of empowerment, and my colleagues here also. But in the coming years, yes, it is going to be free. Fingers crossed, prayers, hopes, and all the hard work, it is going to be free. And yeah, that's it. There's a possibility in that happening. I really look forward to that day. So very soon.
Okay, thank you so much. So we have another question from Gamu, and I think I'll have Nyasha and Faith answer this question. So it says, what are the ways to fundraise other than crowdfunding and using personal funds? How can we get the community more engaged and willing to donate? I think I know, I'll start with Faith because I know this is an area of some of the activities that you do include fundraising and also, setting up donations that have to do with menstrual hygiene.
Yeah, so I'll give practical examples, things that have worked for us at Copper Rose. And, since we started in 2015, all we wanted to do was be this campaign or group of young people leading this campaign on sexual reproductive health, particularly menstrual hygiene. And some of the things that have worked for us is not only using, platforms such as social media, but also using people, influencers to promote the work that we're doing, working with people who can, spread some of the impact that we've had. When we started, we're just students on university campus. We went door to door on campus asking people to donate to support the purchase of sanitary pads for girls in schools and pad bins because we wanted it to be a more, it's easy to dispose and whatnot. They don't have to think about disposal. And then from there, just simple things like posting the pictures on social media and people get interested and like, oh, I want to be part of this. How can I join? How can I contribute? I want to give maybe like $1 each day or $1 a week or $1 a month to contribute to your cause. So number one, I would say using social media. And everything these days is, everything you need is on the phone. You can check your phone, you can check for anything if you want to have access to information and news and all the latest things. So that's the platform to start from. Secondly, is thinking about sustainable ways that you can support communities. One thing that we've done at Copper Rose is we have taught women in communities how to hand sew their own reusable pads. I don't know if it was Nyasha or Goetse who mentioned something about reusable pads, or maybe you, Stepha, but teaching communities how to hand sew their own pads with products that are easily available to them. For example, you use a face cloth as the absorbent, like the top part of the sanitary pad, and then the leak-proof material, you can use maybe like a maize meal material, like a sack, like, a maize meal bag, that sack which is, it can't allow anything to pass through, or the cover of an umbrella, for instance. Those are products, those are things that they can easily find. And teaching them how, using these sessions when you're teaching them how to make their own hand-sewn pads, to talk about the issues, to talk about the stigma. Earlier there was a question about stigma. In my opinion, stigma starts in the home, because when a girl becomes of age, the first thing that happens is she's like the mother to the girl's sister is the one who comes to talk to the girl, instead of the girl's mother sitting the girl down and saying, hey, my daughter, you've become of age, this is what's going to happen to your body and your body is changing. So instantly she's creating a gap, and the girl won't feel like, she can go to mom and ask her when she has terrible cramps, or what do I do when my flow becomes heavy, or what do I do when these products are not working anymore for me, because the mother had someone else, maybe the girl's grandmother, to come and talk to her about her first time. So instantly that creates a gap, and instantly this is where things like stigma come in. Going back to the question, another way that you we can empower communities to be able to, fundraise and raise awareness about menstrual hygiene is also, I guess, even just leading by example ourselves. How do we talk about menstrual health issues? How do we conduct ourselves when we're talking about menstrual health issues? If we are already saying that the boys should not be involved in the conversation, then instantly we're not seeing that this is a challenge that can be solved collectively. All genders can work together to solve this challenge. Yeah, I think those are my 2 cents on this. Over.
Thank you. I think I'll ask the same question to Nyasha, if you would want to cover some of the ways you are, raising funds, how people can raise funds towards menstrual hygiene. Any ideas? Just a quick one. I know Faith covered most of it.
Let me just. Okay, so Faith basically said all of the things that we are also doing in raising funds, but I think the most thing that has been my attention was the fact that we want to move away from just donating pads. We want to look for a sustainable way of fundraising for something that is more sustainable. So instead of us fundraising for people to donate actual pads, what we have been doing is, just fostering that culture of talking to girls and let them know that you can also use your own, you can also sew your own sanitary pads. So instead of fundraising for pads, because honestly, pads are now expensive. I do not want to lie, in Zimbabwe, pads are expensive. You can't even get the general public to be interested in donating pads, because I can't even afford my own pads, let alone raise for somebody else. So what we have done, we have realized that pads are expensive for everyone. So we now want to foster a culture of teaching young girls of sustainable ways of using the reusable pads. We're also trying to also bring in the menstrual cups. A lot of stigma around it. So what we're trying is to collaborate with organizations that are already using, that are advocating for girls to use the menstrual cups. And what we're doing is just going into schools and teaching girls that, menstrual cups are not only sustainable, but they're also safe to use, and also sensitizing parents as well, because the stigma usually comes from the parents as well. So in as much as we're trying to fundraise, we do so many events like dancing classes, defense classes, to raise for money to buy sanitary wear. But I feel that is not enough. We need to have a sustainable solution to everything that we're doing. So I think reusable pads and menstrual cups are the way to go.
Thank you so much, Nyasha, for that. So we'll go to our last question, and I'll pose this question to Goites. The question is coming from June. So June is giving a simple example of how different cultural practices are so harmful. And in her question, she's asking, how can we get away from these harmful practices? And I know there are things earlier in the webinar, we talked about how they would say a woman is not supposed to cook. They will ask them to insert several things in their vagina and so on and so forth. So how do we move away from such practices? I think this question will go to Goites.
We always say that culture is dynamic. It is possible to change some of the cultural barriers. I think what we can do, because going into the community is quite a challenge, approaching old people who feel that what they did worked for them. So usually you target the traditional leaders. In our country, we have our traditional leaders whom you know that they are powerful. They can hold community meetings, and the community really believes in their leadership. If you target such people and educate them and provide, and also use them to mobilize the community for you to teach them what menstrual health is exactly, it will be a starting point for us to break all these cultural barriers that we are facing. Because if we are going to come out from the outside, even if we are community coming into a different community to come and challenge their beliefs, it's a different, it's a difficult thing, I would say. But if we use the leaders that are within their communities, the people that they have chosen, they are bound to believe and they are bound to change the ways. So I believe that the community leaders are the way.
Thank you so much. We'll go to I think our last question, and I'll pose this question. The other panelists I know you have says, what are the best materials for making reusable pads? In just a minute, Faith.
Oh, sorry, Musonda, was that question directed to me?
Yes, because it's saying what are the best materials for making reusable pads, just in 1 minute, so we can wind up.
Okay, yeah, the best materials will obviously, I would highly encourage anyone who wants to make pads to use materials that are tested and proven. In Zambia, I would say that we don't have the standards yet by the states to actually approve and certify the products, the fabric that you need to use. But if you want to know the exact, I don't have the names from the top of my head, but I know that there are specific materials that you can use, and also like makeshift materials like those I mentioned, like a leak-proof material could be substituted for something like an umbrella cover, or like the soft cloth material, in this case, could be substituted for like face towel material, or even fleece or things like that. But those are the makeshift materials that you can use. However, if you are interested, I can maybe link my email down here in the chat box, and you can write me and I can share more information about some of the things that we do for communities in terms of materials for making reusable pads.
Thank you so much, Faith, for that information. So you can definitely just type in your email and I'll be able to share it with the person that asked. So to all our listeners, thank you so much for joining us. We have come to the end of our discussion. I would like to thank the panel of these lovely ladies for sharing their knowledge in a very Pan-African way, inclusive way, and I hope you all got some knowledge or some. If you would like to know more about Girl Up, we have us on our several social media accounts, Twitter and on Facebook as well. The panelists once again, and everyone have a good evening. For those who evening, and those who, if it's afternoon, have a lovely afternoon. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.